Creepy things from history we can't get out of our heads. In 1996, archaeologists uncovered a mass grave in Herxheim, Germany, of over 500 men, women, and children whose muscles, tissues, and organs were cut from their cadavers post-mortem. After examining the bones, experts believe that all of these people were healthy at the time of their passing. They disagree on whether or not the remains display signs of human butchering practices or reburial rituals. Bruno Balestin of the University of Bordeaux in France believes the bones belong to enslaved people, war prisoners, and others who were subjected to a cannibalistic ritual 7,000 years ago. The remains show signs of butchering, where meat was stripped from the bones and brains, and facial tissues were removed from the skulls. Other experts remain skeptical about why the meat was stripped from the bones of the dead. Jörg Orschied of the University of Leipzig and Miriam Hadel of the Senckenberg Research Institute and Natural History Museum maintain that the missing jawbones on the cadavers indicate a reburial scenario, much like those performed in ancient Egypt. The next fact will blow your mind. But before we proceed, please subscribe. People turned themselves into honey mummies to be eaten. Though people recognize honey as a tasty treat that can heal everything from cuts and scrapes to seasonal allergies, its use for mummification often goes overlooked. The ancient Assyrians embalmed the deceased with honey, and Alexander the Great was reportedly submerged in a coffin full of the amber liquid. But in 16th century China, people combined honey's use as a food and embalming substance. They ate mummies covered in honey to cure all types of ailments. The mummification process started while the person was still alive. The process, mummification, gave the elderly population an opportunity to donate their cadavers to science. As they neared the end of their lives, they stopped eating or drinking anything but honey. Eventually, their insides basically turned into the substance. They would sweat, defecate, and bleed honey until they perished. Then, their cadavers were placed in coffins filled with honey and left to marinate for about a century. Once the body had turned into a sugary blob of candy, it was sold by merchants as a healing tonic. Patients could use it topically to treat scrapes and broken bones or ingest it to heal internal ailments. Although no concrete evidence exists that patients used the mummified human remains as medicine, corpse medicine was common at the time, and archaeological dig sites suggest that honey entombment was a part of cultural practice. An incompetent French captain wrecked his ship before leaving its passengers to perish at sea. In July 2, 1816, a French naval vessel, the Medusa, got stuck on a sandbar off the coast of Africa. The incident immediately caused a scandal because the incompetent captain, Hugues Duroy de Chaumaris, had earned his position due to political connections. After 3 days of trying to redirect the ship, the crew decided to abandon the vessel. More than 400 people were aboard, but the lifeboats could hold only around 250. De Chaumaris chose to save himself and his senior officers, leaving 146 ship passengers to fend for themselves on a hastily and poorly constructed raft. The unfortunate raft passengers spent a grueling 13 days at sea, with only a bag of biscuits, some water, and a few casks of wine to survive. Out of desperation and growing hostility among the group, many were thrown overboard in fights or slain and eaten by the remaining people afloat. By the time they were rescued, only 15 men had survived. China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, was a highly ambitious ruler. By the time he passed in 210 BCE, he had successfully united China's 6 quarreling states to create a peaceful, unified nation. His interment site is famously surrounded by the Terracotta Army, a collection of over 8,000 ceramic soldiers and horses meant to protect Qin Shi Huang in the afterlife. Ironically, he never intended to end up in this massive mausoleum. The emperor spent his short 39 years searching villages near and far to find an elixir for immortality. Unfortunately, this very quest most likely ended his life. When over 36,000 slips of bamboo covered in ancient calligraphy surfaced in 2002, researcher Chunlong Zhang set to work deciphering them. Zhang found 48 medicine-related slips, confirming that the emperor placed a decree on the nation in pursuit of a potion that would allow him to live forever. Some slips even revealed the villagers' responses to the request, offering special elixirs or expressing regret that they hadn't found a solution. One of the substances he regularly ingested was cinnabar, also known as mercury sulfide. Experts attributed Qin Shi Huang's cinnabar habit to his belief that the substance would help him live for eternity. Instead, he was inflicting himself with mercury poisoning. Some dentures in the 18th century were made from dead soldiers' teeth. Imagine having to get dentures and then finding out that the fake teeth you received were actually real. Well, in the 18th century, some dentures were, in fact, real human teeth. Bizarrely, they were in quite high demand from the wealthy, so much so that the teeth of thousands of soldiers who died in the Battle of Waterloo were used to help rich people replace their rotting teeth. It's a phenomenon known now as Waterloo teeth, though it's not known whether they went by the title back in those days. The teeth were stolen by looters, who would sell them to dental technicians that would boil, carve, and shape them into dentures that they could sell to wealthy people who needed their mouths fixed. Romans used human urine as teeth whitener. Ancient Romans used to use both human and animal urine as mouthwash in order to whiten their teeth. The Romans contributed greatly to civilization, roads, cement, aqueducts, the postal service, but not all of their creations live to the present day, and some deservedly so. Ancient Romans used to use both human and animal urine as mouthwash in order to whiten their teeth. The thing is, it actually works, it's just gross. Our urine contains ammonia, a compound of nitrogen and hydrogen that is capable of acting as a cleansing agent. Today, ammonia is an ingredient in cleaning products most useful for glass, porcelain, stainless steel, and getting baked on grime off of your oven. For example, there existed public jars in which Romans could relieve themselves. The citizens waited until the urine was sterile and dissolved into ammonia. When full, they were collected and taken to a phalanca or laundry to be diluted with water and poured onto dirty clothes. The urine collectors were taxed due to the smell. Someone was then paid to stomp on the clothes. Urine also contains nitrogen and phosphorus, which are both useful for growing plants. The Roman author Columella wrote that old human urine was particularly useful for growing pomegranates, making them juicier and tastier. Death by krinolin? One of the outlandish things that women in the Victorian era did was to adapt the cage krinolin as a way to achieve the sought-after full skirt. Made of wood, steel, or horsehair, the krinolin was a stiff underskirt that made a woman's skirt a force to be reckoned with. While women reveled in the size and shape the krinolin could provide, alas, it was not all picnics and carriage rides. Because the large skirts extended so far beyond a woman's body that they were hard to keep track of and indeed had a mind of their own. For starters, they were a serious fire hazard. Made often of cotton or gauze and swaying to and fro with grace and vigor, they easily caught on fire. It is estimated that around 3,000 krinolin fire deaths took place between 1850 and 1860. I am of the belief that this figure is quite inflated, but it does provide proof that such tragedy was not uncommon. Among the women who died were Longfellow's wife and two of Oscar Wilde's sisters. Keep in mind that not only were live fires much more common in the Victorian era when they were required for warmth, as with the corset, the krinolin was worn by all classes of women. Many a female member of the household staff was injured or killed when her dress was dusted with embers. That's it for today. Remember to support our channel, please subscribe.